We have often been accused of being revolutionaries because we demand a share in social rights for animals, anarchists because we do not accept that intelligence should arrogate to itself a tyrannical omnipotence over our less gifted brothers, and disruptors because we want to change the order that is as stubborn as it is unforgiving, which mercilessly hands over the weak to the whims of the strong. Well, we are this and that, and better still, we are above all nihilists. Not those timid sectarians who confine themselves to religious or political questions and only follow the doctrine up until a point, terrified by the idea of nothingness, but rebels who say to life, "You will go no further." We who profess contempt for the human race as it has been formed by ancient and modern civilizations, who despise philanthropic duplicity and who keep intact in this weakened world the proud misanthropy of the reprobate, have come to bring you a radical formula against misfortune. Happiness being nothing but a myth on earth. Happiness does not exist for anyone, because it is not in the immanence of nature. Misfortune is the common law, it is the eternal fatum that weighs on all beings, and before which we must either submit or resign. But the stupid love of life is so strong that the vast majority submit and resign themselves to suffering. If beings only accepted this burden for themselves, they could be forgiven, but, passive to the core, they cowardly obey their enemy, instinct, and perpetuate the cursed heritage by giving life to beings who do not ask to be born. More often than not, they commit this homicide unconsciously and are usually punished enough by the disastrous consequences of this moment of absent-mindedness. But when they premeditate the crime, no punishment is severe enough to make them atone for it. Whatever the instinct that those who procreate obey, if they act knowingly, knowing that they create an organism for pain, a soul for disappointment, and a harmful being, both victim and executioner. They are criminals, and the child has the right to consider his father and mother as mere murderers. Yes, murderers, for those who give life, give death. This prospect should be enough to command abstention. But what then? It is the end of the world? Obviously, the world will come to an end sooner or later, and I, for one, have no problem with that. I do not even mind glimpsing into the mists of eternity and seeing the earth finally purged of its human microbes, left to the wild flora and fauna, awaiting the blessed day when it is stripped of this last instance of life. This shaven old globe, without beard or hair, like a large pumpkin, will roll into the heavens. Moreover, everything in the universe indicates that nature is tending towards this eventuality, which, in the interest of all, is wise to hasten. To support my argument, let's take the planet at its birth. It is an enormous nebula, endowed with tremendous expansive power, a veritable explosive shell, then a gleaming sphere, then a swamp, where life boils in the roar of jaws and bellies, where the apocalyptic and voracious beasts of the Eocene relentlessly procreate and devour in insatiable ruts and gurries. Finally, the mere dries up, and on its leprous crust where saurians crawl, humans appear, combining within the nature of all primitive monsters. Along with the atavistic appetite of ancestral species, they carry the lightning bolt, stolen from the infernal or celestial fire which will later consume them, their race, and everything they touch. Then they emerge onto the plain from the cavern, where hunger was satisfied by the leftovers of the bear and the great Spelia. And disgusted by humankind's petty scavenging, these wild animals abandon him. Greedy for flesh, but cowardly and deceitful, they lure prey into traps, kill with devices, not daring to risk hand-to-hand combat with the bold and brave, hungry animal, and as if nature had predestined them for every dirty role, as soon as they realized that captured females attracted males, this vile trapper became a matchmaker. The patriarch proudly sacrificed the tamed stallions on the altar and domesticated the young, in huts of treacherous gentleness. But it is in the blood. An old human inclination leads to turpitude, said Hugo, that seer of the dark ages. There is only one thing that surprises me, and that is that humans' offspring, who are sometimes born wearing a coal cap, aren't all born wearing triple-decker caps. In this way, humanity increased in abundance and prospered. It prospered so much and so well that by dint of growing and multiplying and becoming tribes after 2 or 3 generations, the want of sufficient food drove the lean to eat the fat, and families killed each other. Just as we see today between peoples, this armed conquest over food is an inescapable law. As soon as a thief sits down as the third to a banquet where there is only room for 2, sharing would be generous but absurd. Given that anemia would be the result of charity that is as useless as it is ill-ordered, with everyone starving at a table where no one can get enough. So, instead of 1 corpse, you would soon have 3. And your generosity would have been worse overall than the most ferocious selfishness. Elimination is therefore essential, and when short-sighted people fail to keep a close eye on things, nature takes care of the job. Famine, plagues, and wars are the means she uses to clear the way. From time to time, to vary these delights, she adds a small or even large cataclysm, and everything returns to normal until it happens again. Whether it is human or beast, it is always the same story. As soon as there is congestion, there is misery. Unfortunately, this mathematically rigorous truth is one that no one wants to hear, because no one has the courage to accept the moral implications. We do as the ostrich does, cover our eyes so as not to see, and even the most philosophical people do not care about what happens after their deaths. While revolutionaries protest in the name of humanity, liberty, and other fraternities, it is humorous to note that the conservatives repudiate Malthus for quite opposite reasons, and are touchingly unanimous on the matter. That the Protestant or Catholic Church should condemn this inconvenient clergyman, for Malthus was a minister, is understandable. Since the Lord said, "Grow and multiply," the Malthusian doctrine goes diametrically against the divine order by diverting the faithful from a duty they are inclined to fulfill with great devotion. In addition to the fact that a reduction in the flock would lead to a reduction in donations, faith would find itself singularly affected by the mere reflections suggested by the perversity of this creator, who incites his creatures to procreate for the pleasure of seeing them devour each other. Seeing the calamities with which the Eternal Father rewards the fecundity of spouses, the father of the family would soon conclude that this God is nothing but a sinister prankster and a monstrous scoundrel. That the bourgeoisie should break with this clumsy conservative immanent, for Malthus was a constitutionalist, is equally understandable. Although they practice his theories in private, the hypocritical but wise rulers are careful not to teach this forward-thinking conduct to the proletariat, so as to receive a supply of serfs to the land and slaves to capital without bearing the cost themselves. The bourgeois know perfectly well that the sterility of the people would quickly lead to a rise in wages, remove luxury, level the ranks, and soon enough force capitalists to live as craftsmen and no longer as parasites. So, as soon as they saw the birth rate falling, they employed the stratagem that Hamilcar used to fill the ergastulum, and that Flaubert recounts in Salam. They removed restrictions and modesty. With provocative shows and music, sometimes saucy and sometimes patriotic, they incite these slaves to fornicate at every opportunity. Oh, it is easy to tame this miserable chauvinistic rabble who get drunk on poor quality liquor and become electric with café concert hymns and Pyrrhic music hall dances. But what conveys a miserable idea of the intelligence of the revolutionaries is that they mock Malthusian insurgents without realizing that their system defeats a power that is even more powerful than all the tyrants in the world, death. We see how they, champions of the masses, fall headlong into the trap of all previous despots. You know what the masses are like, and they will always be this way, even in your Icaria, where theft, murder, and love know no bounds, like in Bizet's Carmen. But they are the obstacle to all autonomy. They are the instrument of all domination, this multitude where appetites growl, where wills are impotent. A control over the population is the bulwark of any conqueror, whom it instinctively follows, even when opening the safety valve, war where the excess of nations is crushed and swallowed up. One night in Paris will fix that, said Napoleon on the battlefield. He, like you, relied on the pregnancies of the plebeians, on the Father Williams and the Mother Jones from the suburbs, on marriages and brutish mating, on get-togethers and wombs. Oh, you champions of free love, practice it on your drunken evenings, and do not spare your wives a beating. Beasts of burden, beasts of slaughter, beasts of luxury, grow and multiply, empty your loins, give birth to offspring who will quarrel like you and empty their souls through their wombs. Listen to Haizemons, who cannot be too harsh with these stupid symmetry purveyors. Descent, the neuropathic hero of Rebuvus, observes a group of children outside his window. This is a view of life under the microscope. The lads were fighting now, snatching scraps of bread out of each other's hands, shoving them into their mouths, and then licking their fingers. Kicks and fisticuffs were freely exchanged, and the weaker vessels got tumbled over in the road, where they lay squalling as the jagged stones scraped their backsides. Looking on at the fury of these naughty youngsters, he reflected on the cruel and abominable law of the struggle for existence. And ignoble as the children were, he could not help sympathizing with their lot and concluding it would have been better for them had their mother never borne them. In fact, what was it all but scurred head colics? Fevers, measles, kicking and coughing in infancy, hard knocks and degrading jobs of work, women's trickeries, vile diseases and wives' unfaithfulness in manhood, then, in declining years, infirmities and a painful death in a workhouse or a hospital. Ah, if ever, in the name of pity, useless procreation should be abolished, that time was now. Man is a wolf to man, says a Latin axiom, and all the hocus pocus of the social republic will do nothing to change this antagonism. It is all very well to found Arcadias in Paraguay or elsewhere, to build Cabetian phalansteries in utopian archipelagos, and to push the influx of future generations to the very limits of the habitable earth. But if the growing germination of humanity is not contained, these Edenic colonies will once again become a hell, where all the evils that decimate present-day society will flourish once again. Proudhon, who was greatly embarrassed by Malthus and who fought him with the arithmetic of Father Larquet, tried to demonstrate that production went hand in hand with population growth. Unfortunately, his seductive calculations fall short, since land, the basis of production, is not a rubber ball and does not lend itself to the elastic theorems of this sophist. Nevertheless, our demagogues are still entertaining the deceptive calculations of this fraud and consider it more politically expedient to adulate the beastliness of the masses than to castigate it. Next to these exalted people are the idiots who moan about the depopulation of France. Compared with the German or English agglomeration, nothing could be truer, but compared with our previous population trends, nothing could be further from the truth. In the past, mortality exceeded the birth rate as a result of the wars and other scourges that befell not only France but the whole world. When I look at animals, I am indifferent to humankind. Being the strongest, they are the least interesting. In short, they do not stimulate my courage. What is more, fighting for humankind lacks self-sacrifice. Selfishness and vanity comes from it, and that disgusts me. Fighting for animals is a thankless task, sanctified by ridicule, but since it requires more selflessness, love, and hatred, I am fine with that. Yes, it suits me to tell you all that you deserve the torments and sufferings, that your indignation amuses me. Do you spare them for other creatures? To tell you, those who advocate for what is already popular and who declaim against the oppressors, that your indignation amuses me? Since humankind have assigned themselves the status of royalty, let them fulfill their duties. Let them no longer be tyrants, but gloriously providential for their innocent subjects. Out of compassion, out of concern for everyone, may they protect and defend them against overflowing proliferation, the main cause of the misery of species and the decline of individuals. I say decline because that is the biological law. Quantity impairs quality in all kingdoms and all races. How dare those who have just closed graves start over again with cradles? Who does not recoil in horror at this cosmic circle, where love and death shuttle back and forth between embryos and corpses? At this macabre nature, this lecherous, gluttonous ghoul, disgorging generation after generation, crushing them under their own torrent and swallowing the all-consuming bitch, this vomit of fetuses and specters, and who does not feel the formidable and vengeful urge to leap at the monster's throat, to plug its mouth and entrails, and to sing this great incubus, this tenebrous pan, into the rest of nothingness.